Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about chapters 2, 3, and 4 of the Book of Boba Fett. And before going any further, I need to mention that there will be spoilers in this review. So if you haven't watched these episodes, then you probably shouldn't be watching this video unless you really want to be spoiled. With that out of the way, let's get on with the review. So I'm covering all three of these episodes in one video because I believe that together they complete a specific story arc for Boba Fett's character and set the stage for the remaining three episodes of the series. And I'm going to walk you through the events that we see in chronological order, beginning with the flashbacks. I'll also cover the present day timeline, and then at the end of this video, I will give my general thoughts on the series and do a little bit of speculating about what's coming next. So, if you recall in Chapter 1 of the series, the flashbacks show how Boba Fett escaped from the Sarlacc pit and was captured by the Sand People. He eventually proves his worth to them by defeating a giant desert creature and saving one of the Tusken children. Now, in Chapter 2, we pick up with that story with Boba being trained in fighting techniques by one of the Tusken warriors, who we kind of assume to be a female. This scene is eventually interrupted as we see a fast moving cargo train approaching. Blaster fire from the train kills a number of the tribe as well as their bantha. We then cut to a nighttime scene as the Sand People burn their dead, and Boba notices a nearby speeder bike gang passing by. Recognizing it as the same gang that he had seen attacking a homestead in Chapter 1, Fett devises a plan to stop the train. He asks for some weapons and then heads to Tashi Station, located outside of Anchorhead. And for fans of the original Star Wars film, they will remember that this is the location that Luke Skywalker spoke of, where he was going to meet up with his friends and pick up some power converters. At this point in time, Tashi Station has been taken over by the biker gang, which is made up of Nikto aliens. They are harassing and intimidating locals who include Cammy and Fixer, two characters who were friends of Luke, and these characters also appear in the deleted Tashi Station footage from the original film. It's actually pretty cool how they recreated the set to appear very much like it was in the original footage. So that's a nice little Easter egg for the fans. So Boba shows up at the station and kicks the crap out of the gang, and he steals their speeder bikes. The next morning, he returns to the Tusken village with the speeders, and he then proceeds to teach them how to ride. They have some trouble at first, but eventually they get the hang of it. After some time passes, their chance to attack the train arrives, and they have it all planned out for a coordinated assault. This whole sequence has a very Western vibe to it, basically being a train robbery. So that aspect of it was pretty cool, and the action in the scene did not disappoint at all. It kind of reminded me of something out of the Mad Max films in a way. So, riding alongside high speed, they eventually get on top of the train, and at this point, we can clearly recognize that the individuals on board are part of the Pike Syndicate, which we had previously seen in the Clone Wars series and also in the Solo movie. Boba reaches the cabin where the droid driver is operating the train, and the droid basically just jumps out the window, and it's up to Fett to get the train to stop, which he inevitably does. After the train crashes in the sand, Boba confronts the leader of the group of pikes and explains that if they intend to cross the Dune Sea, that a toll must be paid to the Tuskens, who lay claim to this region as their ancestral home. He then makes the pikes walk all the way back to Anchorhead. After this, we get a scene at the Tusken village where Boba is gifted a lizard guide who enters his nose and sends him on this sort of hallucinogenic trip. In this vision, Boba Fett encounters a tree in the desert which symbolically wraps around him, and we see various scenes from his past, including a scene when he was a boy growing up on Camino, watching his father fly off on a mission, basically leaving him behind. He returns back to the village after this vision quest with a tree branch in his hand, which he eventually fashions into his own gaffy stick. He is also given the dark clothing that we see him wearing in the scenes from The Mandalorian. So at this point, it seems pretty clear that Boba has become a full member of this tribe of Tuskens and is welcome to participate in all of their traditions, including a ritualistic dance around a fire. Next, we see a daytime scene where Boba Fett leaves the village and heads off to Mos Eisley on a bantha to meet with the Pike Syndicate regarding payments to the Tuskens for passage across the Dune Sea. And at this point, we see a number of visual cues that tell us that some time has passed since the fall of the Empire, including those same stormtrooper helmets on spikes that we'd previously seen in The Mandalorian Season 1. So I think we can safely assume the scene takes place around the time when Mando first came to Tatooine to repair the Razor Crest. Boba tries to negotiate with the Pikes, but they explain to him that they are already paying the Kintan Strider's Nikto gang for safe passage across the desert. Fett tells them that he will eliminate the Nikto, and then he heads back to the Tusken village. But unfortunately, it's too late, and the village has been wiped out, and the symbol of the Nikto gang has been marked on one of the Tuskens' tents. This whole sequence was pretty heartbreaking and disturbing, since Boba had formed such a strong bond with these people. Although, I gotta say, it may not be the last we see of them because, at least to my eyes, it did not appear that the female warrior was there among the dead, but I could be mistaken about that. So Boba Fett is on his own at this point, and he wanders through the desert on his bantha, eventually arriving at a cliff above Jabba's palace. He's clearly spying on them, trying to devise a plan to reacquire his fire spray gunship, the Slave One. We then cut to a nighttime scene where Fett notices several bright flares shooting up off in the distance over the desert. This event is directly overlapping Season 1, Episode 5 of The Mandalorian, when Mando and the other bounty hunter had tracked down Fennec Shand and were attempting to capture her. So we know exactly when this takes place in the timeline. Boba quickly mounts up on his bantha and heads to the location, where he finds Fennec's body left for dead on the desert sand. He picks her up and takes her to this high-tech mod parlor on the outskirts of Mos Eisley, which is inhabited by a bunch of strange-looking people with cybernetic enhancements. These people are referred to as mods. Boba approaches the cyber surgeon running the place and offers him a bunch of credits to save Fennec's life. So he proceeds to replace parts in the stomach area with these cybernetic enhancements, which will allow her to live again. Next, we cut to a nighttime scene in the desert as Fennec wakes up and is introduced to Boba Fett, who explains to her how he rescued her and saved her life. He then recruits her to help him recover his ship from Jabba's palace. She agrees under the condition that her life debt will be repaid with the success of this mission. Upon arriving at Jabba's palace, Fennec uses a miniature probe droid to map out the palace and determine how many guards they will face. As they wait for the probe to return, Boba explains his motivation for wanting to take over Jabba's empire, saying that he's tired of just being a hunter working for idiots who are going to get him killed. After the probe returns and they look at the intel, Fett and Fennec sneak past several guards and go in through a sewer grate. They enter the kitchen area and have a scuffle with several droids. Eventually, they find their way into the hangar holding the Slave One. They fight off 2 Gamorreans, but then the alarm sounds and more guards arrive. Boba fires up the ship and Fennec fights off the guards. Ultimately, their teamwork pays off and they successfully steal the ship. As they fly away from the palace, Boba tells Fennec that her debt is paid and he offers to drop her off. But she instead opts to stay for the ride. And the next part is fantastic as Boba tracks down the Nikto speederbike gang and he just completely obliterates them with the weaponry on his ship. This scene was truly satisfying to watch as a pure revenge move. So that part of this episode was just super exciting. Next, he takes the ship back to the Sarlacc pit, thinking that his Beskar armor must still be there. And there's a tense sequence as the Sarlacc grabs onto the ship. But eventually, they launch a seismic charge, which kills the Sarlacc. Fett then attempts to crawl into the pit and look for the armor, but fails to find anything. And he gets further burned by the digestive acid, necessitating all the back to healing sessions that we see in the present day timeline of these episodes. Next, we get another important scene where Boba convinces Fennec that they should join forces and work together. Fennec remarks that living with the Tuskens has made him soft, but he replies that no, it has made him strong, understanding the important lesson that you can only get so far without a tribe. Hence why he sees that through building an organization of strong allies, by taking over control of this territory on Tatooine, formerly controlled by Jabba the Hutt, it could be his path to building something far more sustainable going forward. So at this point, the story has essentially caught up to the present day, and we can just splice in the scenes from The Mandalorian Season 2, where Boba tracks down Mando, reclaims his Beskar armor, and in that end credit sequence, he returns to Tatooine, kills Bib Fortuna, and takes over Jabba's empire. Now, as you recall from Chapter 1 of this series, he was visited at the palace by this arrogant representative of the mayor of Mos Espa, after which Fennec and Fett took a trip into the city to meet with Madame Garza at her sort of upscale gambling establishment. And then outside of the place, they were attacked by a group of assassins. Now, that assassination attempt failed, and one of the group was taken captive by Fennec Shand. Chapter 2 picks up with that story, with Fennec bringing that assassin back to the palace for questioning. Now, at first, it looks like he's not going to give up any information. But then they drop him into the Rancor pit, and under the threat of potentially being eaten, he spills the beans and basically says he was hired by the mayor. Of course, this whole thing was a bluff since there is no Rancor in the pit at this point. Next, we cut to Boba, Fennec, the two Gamorrean guards, and their captive prisoner heading into Mos Espa. After barging their way into his office, they confront him about the assassination attempt. The mayor kind of plays dumb about the incident and shoots the assassin, claiming the assassin's order has no jurisdiction outside of Hutt space. He offers a reward to Fett for his capture, and then recommends that he visit Madame Garza's establishment in order to gain some insights into what is actually going on, which he eventually does. At this point, it's revealed that two twin Hutts, who are cousins of Jabba the Hutt, have laid claim to his criminal enterprise on Tatooine, and they show up on this gigantic litter carried by servants. So at this point, they exchange words with Boba Fett. We see that the Hutts have also employed a Wookiee gladiator named Chrysanthemum. After this tense standoff, they eventually leave, warning Fett that he should sleep lightly. Next, we get a scene in the palace where AT-8 explains the various territories of Mos Espa and how they are controlled by three factions. This session is interrupted by a visiting watermonger who has come to complain about a gang of young hooligans who've been stealing his water. This gang is made up of mods, very much like the ones we saw in the scene where Fennec gets her cybernetic implants. Boba eventually walks up and confronts them in person in the streets of Mos Espa, but they are defiant, saying they have to steal the water because the watermonger is overcharging for it, and there is no work for them in the city. Fett recognizes the potential uses for this group because of their cybernetic enhanced abilities, and he goes ahead and offers them a job. Next, we get a scene where Boba is being pulled from one of his healing sessions in the back of the tank by the Wookiee Chrysanthemum, who proceeds to throw him around the room and generally beat the crap out of him. Without his armor and his weapons, Fett is clearly outmatched, and he stands no chance of being able to fight him off. The mods enter and surround the Wookiee, attacking him with various weapons, but he beats them off fairly quickly as well. Next, the two Gamorrean guards enter, and Chrysanthemum goes after them. The fight eventually spills down the staircase into the palace throne room, and with Fennec's quick action, they manage to get him to fall into the Rancor pit. After this incident, the twin Hutts show up to the palace to apparently apologize for sending Chrysanthemum to kill Boba Fett, and they bring with them the gift of a pet Rancor. They claim that the mayor of Mos Espa has given over control of the territory to another syndicate, and that they are going to be leaving in order to avoid an unnecessary war. They don't want Chrysanthemum back either, so Boba releases him with a word of advice: not to work for scugholes like the Hutts. Next, we get a scene between Boba and the Rancor's keeper, who takes the blinders off the creature so that he can bond with Fett. Boba says he intends to learn how to ride the creature, saying he has ridden larger creatures, which is obviously a reference to the holiday special cartoon. Fett, Fennec, and the mods then head into town to confront the mayor, only to find his room abandoned. The mayor's assistant tries to escape in a speeder, but the mods pursue him through the streets, leading him to crash and be taken prisoner. At this point, we learn that the mayor is working with the Pikes. We then see a number of Pikes arriving on one of the starliners docked in Mos Espa. Fennec warns Fett that this is just the first wave and that they are eventually going to war. After Boba Fett completes his final healing session in the Bacta tank, he decides to make an appearance in Mos Espa. So he heads to Madame Garza's place and finds Chrysanthemum beating up on a group of Transoceans who were gambling. Garza tries to calm him down by offering to forgive the debt he has incurred as a bar tab. But Chrysanthemum isn't having it and rips the last Trandocean's arm off and then pays his debt. After leaving the bar, Boba approaches Chrysanthemum and offers him a job as well. Next, we cut to a dinner meeting in the throne room of Jabba's palace. Attending this meeting are the three factions who control Mos Espa. This particular meeting reminded me very much of the similar meeting in The Godfather, when the 5 mob families gathered together to come to a peaceful truce. There definitely seems to be a visual influence there in terms of how the scene was set up. Boba wants their help in fighting the Pike Syndicate, but they are reluctant to join, so he suggests instead that they simply agree to remain neutral as he takes on the Pikes by himself. They agree and depart. As Boba and Fennec observe the various factions leaving, they discuss hiring some more muscle to assist him with the coming battle, at which point the familiar Mandalorian theme song can be heard, which means that they will seek out the help of Din Djarin and perhaps some other bounty hunters or other Mandalorians like Bo-Katan. So this episode ends with a very exciting tease for what's coming next. Overall, I really enjoyed these 3 episodes in terms of setting up the conflict to come. I particularly love all the stuff with the Tusken tribe, showing how his experience with them really changed his way of thinking. He used to be a bounty hunter who worked alone, but with the Sand People, he learned that mutual cooperation among a group can lead to much greater things. And that's why he teamed up with Fennec and also took over Jabba's criminal organization. He wants to be the boss of his own destiny, a leader of others who will be loyal to him not out of fear, but out of respect for his overall goals. My only minor criticism of the series so far is that the process of using flashbacks to tell a story means that it tends to be a rather slow reveal in terms of establishing Boba Fett's motives for wanting to become a crime lord. And in some ways, it might have been smarter to tell the story in a linear fashion from beginning to end, more in keeping with the original Star Wars films, which contain no flashbacks at all. But again, this criticism is minor, and I fully understand why the story was told this way, just because we have already seen where he ends up in Mando Season 2. So here's the question, what's coming next? I fully expect that we will see Boba Fett assemble a large group of followers, each with their own skill set in order to take on the Pikes. But it seems likely there is a larger force behind their power grab, perhaps led by Black Sun or Crimson Dawn, or some other crime syndicate. Perhaps it could be the Imperial Remnant that is behind everything as well, since we know at this point in time there are various Imperial officials working secretly to retake control of the galaxy. After all, that was what Moff Gideon was up to in The Mandalorian. And although he was captured by the New Republic, there are no doubt others out there who desire as much power as he did. So, you guys let me know in the comments where you think this thing is going and what's going to happen next. That's pretty much all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more reviews of Star Wars series like the Book of Boba Fett, think about subscribing to the channel because I will be covering more of this stuff in future videos. So stay tuned. Until next time, I hope you're having a great day, and may the Force be with you. Thanks for watching.